class, today we're going to look at how to design our own perler bead pegboards. So when I say a pegboard, each one of these is a peg, and that is what keeps each one of these perler beads or fuse beads in place, so that when we're ready to fuse them together with an iron, all of the edges will be touching in one place. And we're going to learn a new word today. When something touches a circle in exactly one place, that's called a tangent. But before we look at how to design it, I want you to notice some of these standard pegboards that come from Perler. So this one is a grid, which is very similar to what we did for our sprite encoding assignment. But this grid allows each circle to touch, a fuse bead to touch exactly 4 other fuse beads. Which is it's a pretty stable design, but this is not as stable as you can get for a perler bead. This one only touches 4. But if I go to this triangular or hexagonal design, you'll notice that each bead actually touches 6. So this makes for a very dense pegboard. And then it's incredibly stable once you've fused your beads together. But what I want you to be able to do is, I don't want you to be limited to squares or triangles. I want you to be able to design things that could take on any shape that you want. So see how this cat almost looks like the triangular one, but it's not quite. So here is a bead, and it's touching 5 other beads. So as you change the shape, you won't be able to get this most dense pattern over here, but you can get pretty close as long as your tool recognizes that all the fuse beads need to fit on your pegboard, and they need to touch all of its neighbors in exactly one place, as many neighbors as possible. So we're going to look at how Onshape is going to help us do that and design our own pegboards. Okay, now that I know what the pegboard needs to look like, let's actually create it in Onshape. I'm going to go and select document and go to the create drop down and create a new document, and this is going to be a perler bead pegboard. So just like before, I'm going to start by creating a sketch, and this time I want to use the top plane. I want to get rid of these planes, so I press P, and then I'm going to press N, so it's the sketch plane is normal to me. Now I want to create a heart that I'm going to turn into my perler bead pegboard. But to do that, I want to draw what I call a construction line, because this isn't actually what I'm going to extrude, but I'm going to come and use not my lines, but I'm going to do this starting with the 3-point arc. Okay, so that 3-point arc lets me click on the 2 edges of my arc, and then I can place the last one. And I've done this so that the center is at the midpoint, so it actually ends up being a semicircle. Now the other cool arc I can build is a conic arc, and what that's going to allow me to do is, instead of this being a straight line to the bottom of my heart, I do want it to be vertical with the center. I can actually change the curvature of this to whatever I want to, and so I can move my cursor around so it looks just like the heart I want. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do is, I don't want to have to try to replicate this on the other side myself, so I'm going to use a mirror tool. But before I can do the mirror tool, I do need to create a mirror line. So this is going to be my construction line, and this will allow me to come back to this mirror tool, choose a mirror line, and then I'm going to choose to mirror both parts of my heart. Okay, so now that I have the outline of my heart, I can start designing my pegboard. So I don't need construction lines anymore. I'm gonna, well, actually I do, because I need to place where all of my pegs, all of my fuse boards are gonna live. And let's start one at the very, very center. But what I'm doing is I want the center of all my circles to be on my heart. But I want the dimension to be exactly 5 millimeters, because that's the size of my pegboards. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I don't want to have to dimension each one of these, so I'm going to just make them all equal. And so once I chose the equal constraint, I can choose any two shapes and it will dimension them to be equal. But my fuse beads needs to touch each other. So I'm going to use this new constraint that we've never talked about, but it's called tangent. And tangent means that something will touch a circle at exactly one point. Okay, so as I do this, all of my circles will touch at exactly one point. And it's not good enough for it to touch, because if it was like a second ago, see how these are overlapping? That's not going to work for my fuse beads, because then my fuse beads won't fit. So I do need to make sure they're all tangent. Okay, so that changed my shape a little bit. So let's actually dimension this edge to be a little bit bigger. I think I want this to be about 25. Okay, it didn't like that. So let me actually undo some of this. And I'm going to, this is the shape that I want, so I'm going to dimension that to be 25. And then this will maintain the heart shape that I want. And now I'm going to come back and apply all of my tangents. Okay, so it did that because it thinks that I want this to be at the midpoint, and I don't actually need that constraint, so I'm going to remove that. Now I'm going to try to come back and apply the tangents. Okay, so it moved my center off of the circle. I do actually want it to be on the circle, so I'm going to come back and use my coincident constraint to put that center back on the circle. Okay, so these are still construction lines because, and let me draw just a couple more, because these are where the fuse beads are going to live, but it's not where the pegs are going to live. So let's again make those equal. And then come back and use my tangent to make these tangent to each other. And remember, when I apply a constraint, I just select everything that I want it to be, to apply the constraint to. So that just went red because I must have accidentally applied a constraint for this to be coincident with that dot. But I don't really need that constraint. So let me get rid of this. And we'll draw it again. But just make sure it doesn't apply any constraint that I don't want it to. And we'll make it an equal constraint first, and then we'll make it tangent. Okay, so that helps to visualize where all the Perler beads or fuse beads are going to live. Now I actually need to design my pegs. So I'm going to go back to my circle. This time it's not a construction circle because I want these next sort of circles to be my pegs. And I measured it. I know that my pegs need to be 2 millimeters in diameter. And I'm not going to keep dimensioning all of them because I don't want the number 2 on my drawing 100 times. I'm just going to eyeball it a little bit, but then I'm going to go back and use my equal constraint because I did I did dimension this first circle to be 2. And I'm just going to make all the other ones equal. And notice how all the lines are turning black as I make those equal. Okay, so the next part is, if you notice, I'm not going to be able to fit a fuse bead right here. It's going to be too close to this. But that's okay, because I can just fit it up here. And I think it might have accidentally tried to make it horizontal with that, and I don't want that, so let me try again. I'm just going to make it coincident here. Don't let it apply any more constraints than what I want. And then I'm going to go and apply the equal. And then I'm going to apply the tangent. And I can't make a tangent to here, so it won't be symmetrical, but that's okay. It will still allow all the fuse beads to touch each other. Okay, so now I can go back and actually put in the pegs. And I'm going to dimension it using equal rather than typing in the number. So I'm going to come back and look for the equal and apply that 2 millimeter diameter to all of these new circles. Okay, so you'll continue to do this until you have your complete pegs. Now, one of my other suggestions is, if this is the only pegs that you have, it's a very weak joint because it's only touching in one place. So I would reinforce it with some more, like a second layer. And this time, instead of drawing it onto a construction line, you really just need to draw your fuse bead outlines first. So let me show you what I mean. Let's make a few of them. And then I want the fuse beads to be the same size. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them tangent to as many pieces as I can. Okay, so that's going to fit in there nicely like that. This one will probably be able to touch this and this, but notice how it's not going to touch this one down here. So as I design where the fuse beads are going to live, I can come back and design where the pegs are going to live. Okay, and I don't want to clutter up my diagram, so I'm just going to make it equal to an existing circle. Okay, now that they're all black, I'm not going to demo the whole thing, but you just keep doing this until it fills up whatever shape you're building. Once I finish that, I can go and extrude, and I know that these pegboards need to be about 3 millimeters tall. So the actual fuse beads are right under 5 millimeters, so you could possibly have this up to 4, or let's do 3.5. And once I accept that, it gives me all the pegs. Now that's not very helpful if they're all free folding pegs, so the last thing I need to do is actually make the board underneath. So let's actually take a look at sketch 1. So sketch 1, I'm going to create a new sketch, but I'm going to go to this eyeball and show sketch 1 so I can see it in my new sketch. So in my new sketch, I just need to have a very simple, I'm going to use the top plane, but I'm just going to put a very simple triangle or rectangle underneath this heart. And I could even make it rounded at the corners with a fillet. But when I extrude it, I am going to extrude it just to be 1 millimeter thick. and I'm going to have it go the opposite direction so that I can see all my pegs. The other thing I'm going to do is, instead of creating a new part, because I have all these parts now, but I really just want it to all be one part, I'm going to change this new to add, and then I'm going to ask it to merge all the pieces together. So now it's going to build one part with the pegs connected to the pegboard. And I'm going to hide that sketch so I can see my pegboard. And I'm going to do a Shift 7 so I can see it in isometric. It isn't a completed heart, but it's the beginnings of it, having outlined the picture that I want to make with my pegboards. And again, make sure you double reinforce it with 2 rows of pegs, just so that it creates a strong bond when you iron it, or when you fuse it with the iron.